Hi everyone, and welcome to the Higgledy Piggledy Podcast. I personally think, just off the bat, we need to get like a little intro song made. I was saying, well, first of all, I'm Peter, and then above me that's you, Tommy.
Hello.
Oh, you got a different layout to me.
I think we're
We're
all
all
gonna
in
have
a
different,
line.
Yeah, we've all got different layouts.
and
Oh.
that is introduce yourself.
That's me, Alex.
Yeah,
Maybe that's something else we should figure out as well, is an order that we introduce ourselves in. This is going to take a lot of effort, but I'm willing to do it.
nice.
Nice to hear that dedication from you, buddy.
Yeah. But yeah, I was saying to Tommy yesterday, I totally think that we should get a la the what I used to have on my soundboard, the McClunky. We should get Chester to like sing a little intro to the Higgledy Piggledy podcast for us.
I'm with them next weekend, and I plan on getting that.
I'm thinking it will go like the Higgledy Piggledy Podcast, the Higgledy Piggledy Podcast, and then Tommy
And
was
then
like,
metal.
yeah, Tommy was like, it then transitions into like metal music.
I'm down.
So yeah, welcome to the Higgledy Piggledy Podcast. Tommy, do you want to explain the backstory of the name of the podcast for us?
Well, it was originally going to be Roll for Seduction, if I remember rightly, but then that became the channel name.
And do you remember exactly how this name came about, though?
I remember you suggesting it and me hating it.
I think so. We shot a pilot. God, probably getting on for a month ago now. And
Around that.
yeah, and it was Alex had come down. Alex does not live in the same town as me and Tommy. Tommy and I are currently living in the same flat. And Alex came down and we decided to give it a go. It's something we've tried before. It's something we talked about before doing. We tried years ago to make a podcast. So we tried again. And it's a really funny episode that's never going to see the light of day because there's quite a lot of audio issues in it with us recording all in the same space and headsets dying and stuff. But at the end of it, I said on recording, and unfortunately this is quite possibly the most garbled thing because I was using Tommy's headset at the time and my voice fucked up his vocal, like his microphone, even though his voice was fine through it. I said that went a bit higgledy-piggledy, and Tommy didn't seem to like that word. Or that phrase.
Very picky with my dictionary use.
Yeah, like flaccid something.
Let's not open that one up again.
I mean, I have no issues with swearing on the podcast, but maybe that shouldn't be one of the first things we say on the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to get everyone, introduced to us a bit more slowly, and then maybe we can bring out the big guns.
I mean, if I had my mixer back from, I usually have an audio mixer and it's being repaired right now, and they still haven't replaced it. It's been like 6 weeks. If I had it, I would just say it and then just beat myself out with it. So yeah, this is a podcast we do. We're a bunch of nerds. We talk about nerd things.
Usually get distracted.
We got very distracted on that one. So that one, I don't know if we're going to circle back to it because it's been so long now, but we might, I guess, do it. We were talking about different people who might be able to wield Mjolnir. But, yeah, that was getting on for a month ago now, so...
I mean, pretty much the gist of it, or the conclusion we came to was, it is just very circumstantial and situational, depending on, like, the space of mind someone is in, the situation that Mjolnir is in. There have been various like sort of variations of Mjolnir that may or may not change who can wield it, and if it actually gives them the power. And it was basically, we just didn't really get anywhere.
But we did conclude that a baby would be able to be worthy of Mjolnir. Might not be able to lift Mjolnir, but a newborn baby would be able to be worthy of Mjolnir because Vision in the MCU, we were explicitly talking about the MCU, and Vision was able to wield Mjolnir 5 seconds after he was born. Therefore, the classification that we came up with is that you have to it's not so much that you have to prove yourself worthy, you have to prove yourself unworthy to not be able to wield it, and most people do that pretty quickly, but newborns probably haven't had a chance yet.
Spoilers for the 10th anniversary, where we dig out the old files for that recording and launch them.
Yeah, I mean, the Mjolnir conversation was fine. It was kind of about halfway through, it became quite echoey, and then when Alex's headset died, I provided him with my headset. No, sorry, your laptop died, didn't it?
Yes.
So I provided you with my headset. Then Tommy and I were sharing a headset, but for some reason, when Tommy talked through it, I guess your headset was like adjusted for your voice, and then my deep, bassy voice was just blasting it and destroying it. So everything was very garbled when I talked through Tommy's headset. So yeah, last like 15 minutes are completely unusable, unfortunately. But oh well. Right, should we just get straight into it then? You had a conversation you wanted to bring up, Alex.
Yes.
Get us
It may be
loads
a
of
bit
dislikes.
controversial.
Yeah, get us a bunch of dislikes right off the bat.
Okay, so obviously there's been a lot of excitement with the upcoming Spider-Man film, what with all the returning villains and potentially returning Spider-Men. And obviously a lot of people are excited, not so much for Andrew Garfield, but especially for Tobey Maguire. So I decided, because I haven't seen them in a long time, to go back and watch the Tobey Maguire films, because while I like them, or I liked them before, rewatching them again, I never really understood like all the hype behind them. Like, I thought they were good, sure, but I always just thought the Tom Holland ones were just better in my opinion. I just thought it kind of captured the character, except for Iron Man giving him presents and stuff, which I know Pete has views on. But yeah, I decided I'd go back and watch them and just see if my opinion would change after not having seen them for a long time, and after having seen the latest Spider-Man films. And what I realized was, I don't think Tobey Maguire is very good as Peter Parker. I think he's kind of crap, actually. I honestly watched the first two films, and this, I think this says something. I think, and I mean, it kind of makes sense because obviously you'd get better as you go on, but he was best in the third movie, which is known to be the worst out of the trilogy.
So what you're saying is you don't like a man pushing his 30s in the middle of a high school.
I mean,
Well,
to be fair, Andrew Garfield was older than Tobey Maguire in his first Spider-Man film,
But that man is immortal.
and I was going to say, and he looks more like a teenager. So really, it's just an issue. It's not an issue with Tobey Maguire's age; it's an issue with Tobey Maguire's physical appearance. He's a very handsome man, but he does not look 16 or 18. I guess.
It wasn't either of those things that mattered to me. It was his acting skills. I think even the casting director and the director and the writer knew this, because there are so many times where he just has the least amount of lines and he's just stood there staring at someone with a stupid expression on his face, when he's not like actually making a stupid face or just doing something really over the top, or making jokes as Spider-Man. As Peter Parker, he's pretty much brain dead. Genuinely, I think he's so wooden.
Wow.
I really do not like him in it. I think he is so boring to listen to, so much so that I feel like, because I watched The Amazing Spider-Man last night, and I don't really think Andrew Garfield is much better, to be honest. I think he just kind of does all his like little head movements and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Don't really get that, but I felt like in emotional scenes and stuff, he didn't just like stand there like. Which is exactly what Tobey Maguire did. And every time I watched a scene like that, I was like, there's just no reaction. Like, I just think that's appalling.
See, when Alex said he had a controversial opinion about the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films that he wanted to do in the first episode of our podcast, I assumed it would be something like, I don't like how campy they are, or I don't like how, non-Spider-Man-y they are. And I was like, okay, those are arguments I've heard before, and they're somewhat valid, but I disagree with them. I didn't expect it to be, I think, Tobey Maguire's shit as an actor.
Genuinely though, like I
Not
think
holding back.
like in the scenes where he has to be really intense, and like, you know, especially the scene, you know, when he's holding back the train and everything, he's making, you know, that sort of like face. It's really good, but that's all he's good for, in my opinion. I just also, it's just something about his like, it's the way he like phrases things, and the tone of his voice. It just sounds like I don't know how to put it. Like, it just sounds like he's bored the whole time, you know?
So for me, and I wonder whether this is where it's coming from, is Andrew Garfield feels, I guess, kind of like Ultimate Spider-Man, which is very much a kind of more modern take on Spider-Man and him being more of a teenager and such like. Then Tom Holland is likewise a very kind of young, youthful Spider-Man in spirit, as well as, you know, his age is literally younger than the other Spider-Man, because he's 15 when we first introduced him, and I think both Garfield and Maguire are 18 when we're introduced to them. Character-wise, obviously, actor-wise, they're in their 30s as opposed to early 20s as well. So that there is an element of that, but to me, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, in pretty much every regard, feel like they're going more for the vibe of the original run, the kind of Steve Ditko era of Spider-Man, where he pretty sure Peter Parker used to wear a bow tie. And that's the vibe of Peter Parker that I get from those films, is the sort of nerd who would wear a bow tie.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a lot of what you've said there, while I get what you mean with the blank faces, Tobey Maguire nails the dorky, uncharismatic Peter Parker to a T. He owns that.
Yeah, and like, as much as I like Tom Holland's Peter Parker portrayal, because I think he's great as it, and I think he's the best balance of all of the Spider-Men we've had in live action, I think he's that sort of awkward dorkiness that people find endearing, versus Tobey Maguire's, which is that, I would understand why you have very few friends at school, like, because you would be an outsider. I don't quite see Tom Holland's Peter Parker as being an outsider. I see him as being the kind of quiet one in a friends group instead. And then Andrew Garfield will be getting fucked by hot girls left, right, and center. So, like, you know,
It's Andrew Garfield.
Oh, he's Andrew Garfield with his spiky hair, and he skateboards, and he does photography, and like, no one likes him. Fuck off! Everyone would like him. He'd be the coolest kid in the school.
I think you could make an argument, though, that Spider-Man's had to change over the years, because I mean, like, when the Raimi films came out, times were changing a bit. Like, if you were a nerd back then, you'd get a lot of shit for it. Kind of started changing around the noughties when Raimi came out, so it still kind of made sense. But then when, you know, by the time Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man's out, and especially Tom Holland's,
yeah, I mean,
geeks rule the world now. So.
I think Amazing Spider-Man 1 came out 2012, I want to say. And I would say, for me personally, when nerds started to become cool was around about the era of Game of Thrones coming out and becoming part of the zeitgeist, because there's been plenty of nerdy movie franchises that have come out and have been very, very popular, and you know, it's okay to like that nerdy property, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, etc., Spider-Man, but they haven't been permeated into our culture for as long without stopping as Game of Thrones, which Game of Thrones came out every single year for 10 years or so, 8 seasons, but I think, I don't know, eight. We'll go 8 years, and so that was 8 years of kind of non-stop. It's okay to be nerdy, and kind of around that time, other shows like it were coming out. And as much as I hate it, Big Bang Theory probably helped as well. So that was kind of all coming out around, because I think Game of Thrones season 1 was 2011. So that was all kind of the same era as Amazing Spider-Man started to come out. And yeah, nerds hit my mic arm. That was kind of around the era that nerds were starting to become a little bit cooler. And then by Tom Holland's point, they are, you know, jocks aren't really cool anymore.
That's probably why they changed Flash into someone who's also really smart and picks on Peter because of his intelligence.
But I should also point out, if you're watching this and you're a jock, please don't come and beat me up. You're cool.
But,
I promise you.
Money.
Yeah.
But no, like, I think it's interesting that you said that, Tom, actually, because that was also a point I was going to make in the Aunt May argument, in that, you know, people have voiced their opinion that they don't like how young Aunt May is getting, which I've always had an issue with them saying that, just because I don't think it really matters that much. But also, again, it is the same with how Spider-Man is different depending on the time that, you know, a movie's coming out, because I think it would be strange to see like Sam Raimi's type of Aunt May with this type of Peter Parker.
It would be incredibly strange.
Age-wise, yes. Personality-wise, I don't think so. My major issue with Theresa Murray? I don't know how to pronounce her name. Marissa Tomei. Oh, I was completely off, wasn't I?
I think so, yeah.
My biggest problem with Holland's Aunt May is not her age. It's the fact that so far in the films, she hasn't been utilized as well as I would like Aunt May to be utilized. To me,
I agree.
Aunt May is oftentimes the heart of the Spider-Man stories, in as much a way as Uncle Ben can often be the heart of Spider-Man stories. And to me, she's great. I think she's great in the role, and she does good with the materials she has, and they have a good relationship in the films. I think, you know, the ending to Homecoming is great with her what the fuck moment, and her just kind of accepting it. It's a bit of a weird choice to just have her know and be like very open about knowing, as compared to usually you know that she knows, and Peter kind of knows that she knows, but it's unspoken. Although obviously No Way Home could be changing that. But I think the biggest issue is that so far the lessons that Peter has learnt in the Tom Holland films have been from Iron Man and then Mysterio, respectively. So they've been the person who's provided him that major teaching moment in the kind of middle of the film where things are getting a bit down. They're the one who's given him the pep talk and made him, by the end of the film, he has that moment where he realizes what he needs to do because of them. I guess a bit Happy Hogan in Far From Home as well, and that's a great scene on the airplane. But like, it's not been Aunt May and it's not been Uncle Ben, because Uncle Ben has only been alluded to in the MCU, and I think that's a dying shame, because Spider-Man 2, I think, has one of the greatest Aunt May and Peter Parker talks, which is when he hasn't got his powers anymore and he's given up the suit, and then she basically talks him into everyone needs a hero, and talks about how great Spider-Man is for New York.
And he just stands there staring at her with that just blank and stupid expression on his face. He just stares at her and smiles creepily. Like, he just doesn't acknowledge it. He doesn't even nod or anything. It's literally just...
Look, maybe you need to look at it this way. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man films were coming out in an era where a lot of video games didn't have voice dialogue for the protagonist. So they would just cut to the protagonist and then just have a bunch of options for them to choose from, and maybe Tobey Maguire was just emulating that.
It literally did feel as if like he had dialogue options and he just let the timer run out, so it just didn't do anything, and it just carried on with Aunt May instead.
Aunt May will remember that.
Yeah.
But so I think that's my major issue. Not major issue, because I don't dislike any of the Tom Holland Spider-Man films. I think my issue with the Tom Holland Spider-Man films is he is so good in the role. The fact it's part of the MCU is so good that I want them to be better, essentially. Like, they aren't. And I think I gave Homecoming a bit of a free pass of it because it was his first story and it felt very kind of like an issue of a comic book. But with Far From Home, I was like, if Tom Holland only does 3 Spider-Man films, like 3 solo Spider-Man films, you're wasting your time here. That was 2 or 3 now. I don't think he necessarily will only do 3, although he has gone on the record and said that No Way Home is the end of this Spider-Man series, which I think lots of people are kind of taking that as, oh, it's his final Spider-Man film and all that sort of stuff. I don't think it means that at all. I think what it's saying is this is the end of probably the John Watts maybe it's the end of his directing run, or maybe it's just the end of the home franchise, and it's a trilogy of him growing into being a bigger hero, and then the fourth Spider-Man film is the start of a new trilogy where he is more of his own hero. Maybe that's what he's indicating, but either way, like, if hypothetically Tom Holland hung up the spandex suit at the end of No Way Home, I'd be like, you didn't really capitalize on what you could have done with that character, sort of thing.
I think it would be stupid if they ended there. I mean, on all accounts, because, I mean, Spider-Man is one of Marvel's most popular heroes.
So it is the most popular.
I would say hands down, it's the most popular and the most recognizable.
Tom Holland still looks like a babber, so he can go on for ages. To
the point that people are very unhappy with him playing a 22-year-old Nathan Drake, because they're saying he looks 16. It's like he is 24, and he let's be honest, he actually does look 24. It's just that I think that there's an element, because I've had this conversation with so many people where they're like, Tom Holland looks like a teenager, and I'm like, he doesn't, though. It's just Hollywood teaches us that teenagers look like they're in their mid-20s because that's what most actors portraying teenagers are. But actually, he can play adults because he does look like an adult. He does have to behave like an adult as well, which we can maybe talk about the Uncharted trailer in a bit, because that's a whole other thing that came out this week. But I think his Spider-Man portrayal, the reason why he seems like a teenager more than any of the other ones is because he acts like a teenager, and so do the other actors around him. So, but yeah.
And also, he said that he'd pretty much play Spider-Man forever if he could. So, with all of those things combined, the fact that they pretty much can be assured that they'd make money from more Spider-Man films as well, I don't know why they would bother stopping them, really.
The only possibility with it is, and it wouldn't necessarily be him stopping it, but it would be the Sony Marvel situation, because obviously after Far From Home, Sony and Marvel had their breakup. Was that after Far From Home, or was that after Homecoming?
I think it was
Far From Home, I think.
I can't remember.
Or maybe just before it came out.
Yeah,
I mean, they were having little spats here and there throughout anyway.
Yeah. I think it was in 2018, because I think I was still living in London at the time. I seem to remember a friend of mine who was obsessed with Tom Holland Spider-Man literally crying on my shoulder over the news that he wasn't going to be in the MCU anymore. So I think it was 2018, which would place it around about when Far From Home came out. If Sony and Marvel have another breakup, or Sony and Disney have another breakup, then potentially No Way Home is the perfect opportunity to go Spider-Man and all of the MCU stuff going on. Oh, it's crazy. And then Sony takes him off to his own little universe, and he's separate from the MCU because shenanigans with the multiverse. So he's in the MCU in the sense that the Sony universe exists in another part of the multiverse, but it's them going, yeah, we're not playing ball anymore, Disney. They have the potential to do that. And it would be a bit of a more amicable breakup if that's how they went it, where they kind of agreed with Disney for a story reason why he's never going to intersect with the rest of the MCU. But that could potentially be what they mean by it being the end of a trilogy, is that after that point he's not going to be part of the MCU anymore. That would suck, and I really hope they don't do that. And supposedly Tom Holland called up the CEO of Sony and was like, you sort your shit out and make it up with Disney, because I'm so hopefully if that is what's happening, he goes and does that again. But also just little side note, love Tom Holland to death as Spider-Man. I somewhat doubt that he was actually the deciding thing that kind of brought Sony and Disney back to the table. I think that was more of a
too neatly.
I think it's a bit more of a... He probably played a part in it, but probably when they made their deal again, they went, also, if we say that Tom Holland's the reason why we're back together again, everyone's going to love him even more. It was probably a bit of a PR stunt. That's just... Anyways, yeah.
I mean, it was a bloody good one if it was, to be fair. But, I think they'll probably just keep going, honestly. And also, what you're saying about them maybe, having it go back to people not knowing who he is and whatever, and and also maybe it's not connected, but perhaps if they did want to take him off to Sony Land or whatever, I hope they don't do that because I know we've had this discussion before in that you feel like he hasn't really learned lessons much, like he hasn't had to do a lot by himself really, because he's kind of been given things. And I really hope they don't make it go back to the way it was, because otherwise he still hasn't learned a lesson.
Yeah. I think the thing is, I think when I've said that he hasn't learned his lessons, he has learned lessons from every single film, but he hasn't gotten to the point that Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man got to by the end of the first film, which is the kind of core mantra throughout all Spider-Man films that the Amazing Spider-Man rephrased, because they didn't just want to do the exact same quote again, which is that with great power comes great responsibility. And they've had, I think in Amazing Spider-Man it's something like, yeah, when you have the ability to do something, you have a moral obligation to do that thing, because you've got the power and the responsibility to do the good thing, Peter. It's like it
was pretty much that.
Yeah, it's like a really awfully constructed way of redoing the great power comes great responsibility line
I watched
without saying it.
I watched it last night, and he literally, like, he went on this whole spiel, and then he just ends it with, "It's your responsibility." And I just kind of sat there and I just went, "What was that, the line?"
And then obviously with the home trilogy, for want of a better term, the Holland trilogy, it's been, if you're nothing without that suit, then you don't deserve it, sort of thing, which is kind of close to it, but not quite it. But I don't think he's actually properly learnt the lesson that actually, if he wants to be a superhero, he has to take it seriously. And maybe he did learn it by the end of Far From Home, but it didn't really feel like it tied it up a little bit too neatly. Maybe what the issue is, because I've recently watched the Caravan of Garbage videos on the Amazing Spider-Man films, and they've made the point that a lot of, I think possibly all 5 of the Spider-Man films before the Tom Holland films feature a funeral in them, or maybe 4 of the 5. I'm not sure if Spider-Man 2 features a funeral scene.
Don't
4 of the 5, I think.
Yeah,
I don't think it does.
Spider-Man 1 ends with Norman's funeral.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Spider-Man 3 ends with Harry's funeral. Spoilers for the entirety of the Spider-Man films so far, by the way.
Yeah.
But should have really expected that.
Yeah.
We can put a disclaimer at the beginning anyway.
Sure. So Harry's funeral in Spider-Man 3, and then Commissioner or Captain Stacy's funeral in Amazing Spider-Man, and then Gwen's funeral, or not Gwen's funeral. I think Gwen's funeral is in it, but also he visits the cemetery a bunch of times at the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2. So I think 4 out of 5.
Technically not the last scene, but pretty much the last scene.
I don't think it's necessarily the last scene in all of them, but it's all after the third act has ended are funeral or cemetery scenes. And it's like, that's when Peter Parker learns his lesson about, the weight of being Spider-Man, is when someone's dead. And so far, Tom Holland films, he hasn't been to a cemetery once, so get your shit together, Disney. Take him to a cemetery.
And also, that was what I was going to say earlier, when you were saying about sort of Aunt May kind of taking the torch from Aunt Ben in a lot of the films.
From Aunt Ben?
Whoa.
Very progressive of the MCU Spider-Man films. We've got 2 aunts now.
Before you make your point, by the way, Alex, I just want to add to what Pete said. He has been to a funeral.
That's true. He went to Tony Stark's funeral, I'll give you that.
Which wasn't at a cemetery.
No. But he did learn a lesson from it, I guess.
He did.
Yeah. But, yeah. Aunt May took the torch from Uncle Ben. And I feel like, I think Tony Stark probably is Tom Holland's Uncle Ben.
Mm.
I think it followed the same formula pretty much, in that, Tony Stark was the first one to start teaching him lessons, like you said, with the, if you're nothing without the suit, then you don't deserve it. And then once he's gone, it's like Happy then became Aunt May, in that he was then sort of giving him the, little speeches and saying, no one can be him, and, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like that's a really weird way of doing it. Like, I kind of understand why, but it's weird because, as you said, it is usually Aunt May that does that, and it's weird to have her in there and just kind of be more of like a side note rather than actually important to his character.
It would be a bit like having Alfred in a Batman movie provide the same level of service as Lara Croft's butler in the Tomb Raider movies.
Yeah.
Where it's just... The notes do say that they have a butler, so we've written a butler into the film, but they just offer Batman tea, and that's all they do. I think, honestly, thinking about kind of learning lessons and, no joke, a funeral scene or a cemetery scene, I think, honestly, what would be a nearly perfect ending to No Way Home, I very nearly called it No Time to Die.
That's a Spider-Man film I want to see.
With Daniel Craig as Peter Parker.
Yeah.
But still playing a 16-year-old, but it's Daniel Craig in his 50s.
Can you imagine the ears in the mask just poking out the
Well, look, if Andrew Garfield's massive hair fit in that mask, then
that's
I'm sure.
a good point.
But yeah, so I think the perfect end to No Way Home would be whatever the end result is of the world, and presumably some return to status quo, but maybe people don't know that he's Spider-Man anymore, and I'm kind of predicting that one of the supporting cast is going to die. Happy, May, MJ, or Ned, I think, are the most likely ones.
Oh, I have something else to add after you finished making your point.
No worries. I think what would be cool is if something like that does happen, maybe one of the other Spider-Men dies and they get buried in the world of the MCU. Peter's at the funeral, and then afterwards he walks off, and we follow him, and he gets to a gravestone and kind of talks about, he's finally kind of learned what it means to be the mantle of a hero, blah, 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 blah. And maybe it's built in such a way that we think he's talking to Tony Stark's grave, and then the camera cuts and it says Ben Parker. And just that's all. You don't need to have him say Uncle Ben or anything like that. Just have it be that he talks to Ben's grave. I think that would be pretty much a perfect, I've learnt my lesson. I know what it means to be Spider-Man. I know what it means to stand on my own and kind of, depend on myself and hold people at an arm's length to not get them hurt. And I'm saying that to Uncle Ben because he was the one who taught me the first lesson. Because at the end of the day, Uncle Ben has been alluded to in the MCU, and Peter Parker decided to start fighting crime before Tony Stark came to his bedroom. Presumably because of something that Uncle Ben instilled in him, we assume. So I think that would be a nice way to kind of wrap up that trilogy. Anyways, you were going to say something?
Yeah, actually, I just want to say something else as well before I go on to the point I was going to say. But I feel like they missed a really good opportunity when Aunt May found out about him being Spider-Man in the beginning. I think it was funny that they ended it the way they did with her being like, what the fuck? But I think it would have been at least nice to hear him say, something along the lines of, Uncle Ben said this before he died, blah, blah, blah. And just have, a little moment like that. Or maybe even in future films have a little moment like that. Just because I think that would kind of bring, Aunt May into the fold a little bit more as well, and have that importance in that, I think from what we've seen with her so far, she almost treats it like Peter does, in that it's just kind of cool and even exploits it for events and stuff. And I think
for
maybe
charity.
Well, okay, yeah, but even still,
Exploits.
But yeah, but it is. It really is. Let's be honest, it is. And
I'm sure
I think
Peter would be cool with it as well.
And I think as well, she probably views it more like this is a way that Peter could do good without getting shot at by criminals.
On a street level, like Spider-Man's supposed to.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some good stuff behind it. But you're gonna, yeah.
But yeah, I was just gonna say, I feel
Sorry, carry on.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, we might get something like that in the next film, seeing as
because this is him being fully exposed to the world. Everyone knows who he is. Everyone's gunning for him. So I think, I really hope we do get a scene between them.
Yeah.
Particularly because it looks from the trailer, it looks like Peter's not staying with Aunt May, because I think he's sleeping on a sofa or something when he's texting or messaging, video calling. I don't know what you zoomies do, Zendaya, MJ. Yeah, I get the feeling that maybe he's not staying with Aunt May, in which case it would be nice to have her be even more worried about him because he's not coming home, because he doesn't want her to get in trouble and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, but the point I was going to make as well, when you were saying about you would quite like one of the side characters to die, I was reading up on Ned last night, and I saw a couple of articles rumoring that he could become Hobgoblin, which would also make sense with the massive weight loss he had. I mean, he might have just decided to get healthy. That's, like, that was just kind of my assumption when I first, saw that weight loss anyway, because I didn't even know that in the comics he was Hobgoblin for a time. But I think that could make sense. It would be a bit hard for me to believe the character that we've known for these past two films, who is just like majorly goofy and just like totally on Peter's side for, everything. He's there, like, it would be a bit hard to see him as a villain and have that complete character shift. But like, I think if they did it well, I think it would be a really like good character change.
Have a scene where Ned is confronting a bunch of children in Spider-Man masks, and he pulls out Pumpkin Bomb. Mr. Ned, there's too many of them. What are we gonna do?
But I could see it. I don't personally think I could see him just suddenly becoming evil. And obviously, in the articles I was reading, they did mention that the Goblin Serum, causes bouts of insanity. I still couldn't even really imagine Ned just suddenly being like, I'm just going to go and murder a few people, because even Norman Osborn before that was ruthless. He was like...
But maybe what it will be is like, he's been exposed to the Goblin Serum. He's having these bouts of insanity, and then what you need is the impetus for him to go after Spider-Man with that insanity mindset in mind. And so what you have is when he's like, clawing off his clothes, and he's like, there's lightning and he's screaming. It's very Sam Raimi-esque. He then has this flashback to when he first sees Peter crawling on the roof of his own bedroom, and he drops the Lego Death Star, and he goes, "You destroyed the Death Star." And that's his motivation. How many pieces was it? Like 1,000 pieces or whatever for that Death Star?
I think so, something like that.
That's pretty good motivation, I think.
No, but I think if he was sort of exposed to it, perhaps he even found the Goblin's gear or something, and they adapted it so that he could be a hero, and maybe he was exposed to the serum for a little while, and he basically became like more insane, and then just became sort of like more hateful over time. And that's when he sort of suddenly just snaps.
I do think, though, if they were to kill off Ned, or maybe temporarily kill him off so he can come back as Hobgoblin later down the line, that also seems like the perfect opportunity to introduce in the next film Harry Osborn as Peter's new best friend. Maybe Peter goes to... I don't know how the American school system works. Is Peter currently in middle school or high school? I don't know. But when he gets to the next level of education, whether that's high school or college or whatever, that's maybe when he meets Harry. And Harry kind of fills the void of Ned. That could work quite nicely. Because... although I don't feel the need to have Green Goblin in the same way that, we've had so many versions of Joker. Not that we've had loads of versions of Green Goblin in live action, but we have seen Green Goblin a lot in Spider-Man media, and we don't see a lot of some of the other Sinister Six. Kraven is one that obviously I know you really want, Alex, and, it'd be great to see Kraven in live action. But if they are going to go down the route of Green Goblin, other than Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin showing up in about to call it No Time to Die again, in No Way Home, then it would be cool to introduce Harry at some point. But
yeah, I was just gonna say about the new Goblin in Spider-Man 3, in that I actually like I don't think I quite like resonated with Harry's sort of story arc when I first saw the films. And going back and rewatching them all, I actually really like him. I think his story is probably like one of my favorite parts of that trilogy. I think it just comes to like like it starts off, really well between them. Something happens in between. He, he has the full villain arc, and then it just has a nice ending with him helping him out and basically dying to save his friend.
Hmm.
I just thought it was such a like a nice open closed story as opposed to Venom, which I just thought was complete dog shit watching it again. I thought they could have just left it with Harry and Sandman, the two things closely related to Peter, and just like fucked Venom off because
I'm
I just don't think it had any importance to the story really whatsoever.
I'm pretty sure that Sam Raimi didn't want to do Venom. I know that he didn't want to do 3 villains in
didn't.
Spider-Man 3, but I can't remember which one he wanted to drop. I know he wanted Sandman, but yeah, you're saying
it was Venom that he didn't want.
and it was Avi Arad, I think, that kind of forced him in because he was popular.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think as well, Sandman is great in Spider-Man 3. The thing is, I don't think all of Venom is bad in Spider-Man 3. I quite like the dark Spider-Man suit, the symbiote suit, and kind of what that does to Peter Parker. Ignoring the whole dance sequence when he's in the black suit, everything else about it, like how it actually changes his personality, I think is quite cool. So there's elements of it that are done well, and I can see, like, if he'd been given it in an alternative universe where he got to do it in its own film, I think Sam Raimi would have fucking nailed it, because it's like, it's in a weird way, it's very similar to kind of the Deadite humor from the Evil Dead films, the kind of relationship Venom tends to have with Eddie, and so I think if he'd been able to do that and make it a bit more horror and a bit more comedic, then it could have worked really, really well. But
Yeah, I think my problem with it, and because there were parts of it that I did like. I did like, the fact that you could even though Eddie was just a massive prick, realistically, even to begin with, when, Peter started going out with Gwen and he, exposed him for faking his pictures and everything, like, I did feel a bit sorry for Eddie. And I thought it was funny that he ended up using the same suit, or, Venom, the symbiote, to try and kill Peter because of what Venom changed in Peter that ended up causing Eddie to lose everything. And I thought that was really interesting.
But if we had Venom like he is in the comics, where he actually talks to them, that could have been really extra interesting to have Venom literally be like, well, Spider-Man abandoned me, so now I'm going to manipulate Eddie and pretend I had nothing to do with it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like, that could have been really, really cool. But
That
being said, I don't think I want Venom as an actual character in Spider-Man 3, because that's kind of then 4 villains, because Eddie is his own character in his own right as well. So,
yeah. But yeah, I think, like, there were certain parts that were interesting, but I just feel like it was a cop out by basically having all of those problems just because of Venom. I feel like it just kind of gave Peter an easy, like, wasn't me. Like, even though they never really addressed that, which again I think is like, yeah, I don't know. I just think they could have done without Venom.
You know what would be really cool, actually? I don't know whether you guys have seen, but Warner Bros. And DC have either they have recently started publishing or they're about to start publishing a Batman comic that is a sequel to Batman 89, and like continues the Tim Burton world of Batman, which I guess is then going to link into the Flash movie potentially. But that's really cool because it's this beloved iteration of Batman, and so they continued that story in the comic books. Likewise, Smallville actually had a season 11 through comic books. I think it'd be really cool to see if Sam Raimi would be up for it. someone adapting his ideas for where he would have taken the Spider-Man series in the comic books, because there's some stuff online about what Spider-Man 4 was going to include, but what we don't get to see is things like Gwen is still alive at the end of Spider-Man 3, and Peter was a massive dick to her. That could be quite interesting to explore.
Wasn't there going to be zombies or something in the fourth film?
Don't think so. I think it was going to be Mysterio and Lizard. Mysterio was going to be like, at the beginning of Spider-Man 4, he would have just arrested Mysterio, and it was going to be Bruce Campbell, and it was going to be that all of his characters in the first 3 Spider-Man films were going to be I've forgotten Mysterio's alter ego, Quentin Beck. They were going to be Quentin Beck, kind of like having shit luck, trying to be a kind of a theatrical actor, and so he kind of took on these shitty jobs of being a wrestling announcer and a waiter and all that sort of thing.
I wouldn't call a wrestling announcer to be a shitty job. That's an amazing job.
I mean, based on the manager of the wrestling place, though, he probably didn't get paid very much.
Probably not.
But yeah, so like it was going to be the idea that was Quentin Beck, and like he'd been dotted through the Spider-Man films, and then it was going to be like them taking the fishbowl off, and it was going to be Bruce Campbell, which was a really cool idea. And then the main villain was going to be Lizard, who obviously Dr. Connors had appeared in Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3. Which, funny thing, I haven't seen the Raimi trilogy in a hot minute, but I didn't realize that Dr. Connors actually does have one arm in those films. I just never noticed that when watching them.
Yeah, I noticed it when I rewatched them.
Yeah, I
thought that was a cool thing.
Yeah, particularly because I might be completely wrong, but I would assume that the actor is not what's the term for it? Well, I assume he has both arms because most people do, but maybe they did hire an actor who was missing an arm. I'm going to look that up now. But yeah. So, anything else that we want to talk about relating to Spider-Man and Sam Raimi, though?
I think I've exhausted myself on Spider-Man, except for when I inevitably choose not to go to bed at a decent time tonight and watch the second Amazing Spider-Man film.
Ooh,
Because
boy.
I like torturing myself.
Yeah, you'll be going to sleep quite quick tonight then.
Okay, real quick, I'll just say, though, I stand by the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and the Amazing Spider-Man 2 have some stuff that works.
Sure, some stuff.
The first film I actually quite like. The second film, not so much.
In the second, in Amazing Spider-Man 2, if you remove everything to do with Green Goblin and pretty much everything to do with Electro, and remove the stupid Rhino ending, everything else in there, the stuff with Gwen and the stuff with him actually being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man and the suit, is all quite good.
Thing is, though, Pete,
that is about 15 minutes of screen time when you remove everything else from it, but
yeah, like, I could make a shit sandwich and still say that some of it works, because the bread still probably tastes nice if you careful about what parts you go near, but I'm still not going to go near the shit sandwich.
That's a really bad metaphor, because no, I don't think you could scrape the shit off and still have a nice loaf of bread, mate, but okay.
Oh, I'm not saying a loaf of bread.
Oh, a slice of bread, whatever.
I think the one issue, like, the one real issue I had with the first film, and quite honestly, I didn't have many. I think it is actually quite a solid film. Is the ending. Like, Captain Stacy forces Peter to promise that he'd stay away from Gwen. And then he immediately breaks that promise. And I'm like, what was the fucking point of even having that in the goddamn fucking film?
But isn't the line something like, promises are made to be broken?
Yeah, like, someone was like, the teacher is like, oh, don't make promises you can't keep. And Peter just leans in and he's like, yeah, but they're the best kind. And I'm like, no! You just promised her dying father that you'd stay away from her, and you got all upset, and then Aunt May was like, she's cute, and you're like, yeah, she is. What am I doing? Doesn't make any fucking sense.
I mean, at least he does have to face the consequences that he broke the promise, which was a good promise to make, and she died because of it.
Side note, though, it's a small little gripe, but I do dislike that she dies in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 from hitting the ground versus the comic where she dies from whiplash. I don't know why I prefer her dying from whiplash, other than I think the fact that her head is still intact when he's, like, grabbing her face at the end is a bit ridiculous. But it's just like, to me, the whiplash kill is essentially Spider-Man kills her, not intentionally, but he didn't essentially think enough to use his powers in a way that would have saved her life. Like, she was obviously going to die anyways in that scenario in the comics, but by him catching her with a web like he did, that kills her. And, like, that's like he plays a part in it rather than just not being quick enough being the reason why she dies. I don't know why, I just prefer that little element to it, I guess.
Honestly, I've always thought that she did just break her neck in the film.
Yeah, from whiplash though. Not. Oh, in the film.
Yeah.
In the film, she hits her head on the ground.
She hits her head on the
Yeah,
ground.
I didn't realize that. For this whole time, I thought it was because of her neck just snapping back.
Yeah, into concrete. Her neck snaps back, and the back of her head just slams into concrete, and there's a loud thud.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never knew that.
Yeah. Well, you'll rewatch it tonight. Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, it's like I said, it's a pretty minor thing, and so I understand why to a filmmaker that might not matter, because obviously people are going to interpret the source material differently. I don't think it's a deal breaker, but I do think it just adds an element of, like, Spider-Man. It's kind of I guess an element of, like, the heroes in The Boys, which is like if you've got crazy superpowers, you've got to be careful with them, and, like, the whole idea that Spider-Man, like, pulls his punches so he doesn't put people permanently in the hospital when he hits them, sort of thing. It's like, because Spider-Man was desperate to save Gwen in the comics, and he does it in the way he does it, that ends up actually killing her anyways, and so it's kind of a lesson going forward. But yeah, do we want to talk about the Uncharted trailer?
If you want. I don't really have anything to add because I don't know anything about Uncharted, but
which is crazy to me, but okay.
Yeah.
I think it's weird that there's 2 Sony films with Tom Holland as the lead coming out 3 months apart. December and February.
I guess, he's a good actor. They might as well utilize him while they've got him under contract.
Yeah, he is their cash cow at the moment.
Big time.
I don't know if we've got anything else to talk about. We could talk about Dune, but you haven't seen Dune.
I mean, we're an hour in now, aren't we?
There is actually something I wanted to bring up, because I don't think I have talked to you about it, Alex. I've talked to Tommy about it.
Mm-hmm.
Hayden Christensen confirmed to be in the Ahsoka TV series.
Ah, yes, I saw that you put that in the group chat.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that, because from my understanding, and again, I guess spoilers for anyone that hasn't seen Clone Wars or Rebels or any Star Wars content that isn't the movies, from what I've seen, at least, because I've not watched Rebels, because I plan to now, but at the time, after I was sort of like midway through Clone Wars, I kind of said to myself, I'm not really that bothered about Rebels. And so I watched the scene with Vader and Ahsoka, and to me that was enough. And I think it really depends how they bring him into the Ahsoka series, whether or not I'll like it, because I personally think it fits more for Kenobi, because I feel like realistically Anakin was one of Obi-Wan's biggest failings, at least probably in his mind, whereas Ahsoka, I feel like she faced off with Vader and they had that final conversation that I feel cemented how they felt about each other, and it kind of like solidified in her opinion that he was just too far gone. And so now I'm just like, well, I don't know how they can bring him into like
sort of agree with you. If Vader hadn't have been redeemed, and he wasn't too far gone.
See, for me, I think it really depends on how they're going to utilize Hayden Christensen in the Kenobi series, because if they're bringing him in just to be Vader in the suit, that's a really fucking waste of Hayden Christensen's talents, particularly because presumably they're still going to get James Earl Jones to do the voice. Like, surely that, or at least if James Earl Jones wasn't available for whatever reason, they'd get like a sound alike. They wouldn't just use Hayden Christensen's voice with a modulator, I wouldn't assume. So I'm feeling like it's going to have some out of mask stuff, which is maybe flashbacks. A lot of people have theorized. In which case they probably have to de-age Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor a little bit, because they both look very good for their age, but they both do definitely look older than they were in 2005, 16 years ago. So, yeah, I think if they did flashbacks, then potentially you've got the ability for Rosario Dawson to also show up as Ahsoka and, again, de-age her a little bit. Although I would personally say that Ahsoka is so young in that era that I'd prefer them just to get a different actor to portray Ahsoka if you're going to do that, because Rosario Dawson, I think, is a decent adult Ahsoka, but she's like 16 during the events of the Clone Wars, so then you're having I think Rosario Dawson's like in her late 30s, early 40s. That's quite old to be playing a 16-year-old. Yeah. But yeah, so I think if that's the route they take, then potentially we're going to see Hayden Christensen and Ahsoka interact through flashbacks, or Anakin and Ahsoka interact through flashbacks. I think what would be interesting to see, not sure I want it, but it would be interesting to see a recreation of their confrontation in Rebels in live action. But what some people theorize it's going to be, and I really hope it's not, is him as a Force ghost. Because as far as we know, Ahsoka has not met Luke Skywalker yet. She's probably heard of him, but hasn't met him yet. And therefore, my current headcanon, with her being still in exile and still being, I'm not a Jedi, I'm not going to train Grogu, etc., is that she doesn't know that at the end Anakin redeemed himself. And that, to me, is a bittersweet ending compared to if he showed up as a Force ghost. He's like, "What's up, Ahsoka? I redeemed myself. I made up for killing those kids." Be like, yeah. So, yeah, I kind of hope that he's in it, but not as a Force ghost. That's kind of my only concern, I guess.
I would be okay with it if she still rejects him.
Yeah, that could be interesting.
Because it would be nice if somebody had kind of sense, and like you said, he killed kids. Like, sure, he might have thrown the Emperor off the edge and saved that situation, but he was still
for a little bit.
For a little bit, yeah. But he was still kind of the cause of the whole dark period by helping him in the first place. So,
I think it's difficult to say either way, though, because technically he fulfilled his destiny. He well, at the time, it seemed like he had brought balance to the Force. Obviously, not really, because I don't think, personally, it will ever be balanced, because surely if there are no dark side users, but there is one light side user, or, no Sith, but one Jedi, then it's out of balance.
But you're taking that from the general headcanon of what balance means. And I'm pretty sure that's what Dave Filoni means by balance. But George Lucas did go on the record once and say that Anakin brought balance to the Force by defeating the Sith, which is one of the most hilarious things ever to me, because I'm like, George, everyone thought you were really smart with how balance was like them both being on equal footing, but you're going and saying, no. But yeah, so... I think, but my understanding is Dave Filoni does adhere to balance being them being on equal footing rather than just the Sith being gone. But
yeah. But in that one situation where he killed the Emperor, for a very small moment that he was still alive, yeah, the Force was in balance. So sure, I guess. But then as soon as he died, well, there's one more Jedi than there are any Sith, so fuck, I guess.
Unless Ezra Miller gets corrupted while he's off in the galaxy somewhere.
I mean, hey, we've not seen Jar Jar for a long time.
We've not seen Jar Jar for a long time. But yeah, no, I think it's cool to hear that he's going to be in it. I think I said this at the time when she showed up in Mandalorian Season 2. I think Rosario Dawson is fine as Ahsoka, but I'm mildly worried in general about a live-action Ahsoka series, because to me, Ashley Eckstein is Ahsoka. Like, that's her voice, that's her personality.
Yeah, I agree.
And also, Ahsoka's fighting style is quite flashy and acrobatic. Obviously, she is older now, but still, I think it works better in animation. That's where she was born. I'm fine with her showing up in live-action projects, and I'm fine with that being portrayed by a different actor. But I think, personally, I kind of wish that Ahsoka was announced as a animated series by the Lucasfilm animation team. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I really worried too much about that, as long as the series is good. Like, I'm willing to accept the change as long as they don't just, completely shit on the character. But I mean, I feel like there is a reason for, why she might feel different to, Ahsoka we've seen in Clone Wars and Rebels, in that, yeah, she is older. She's probably seen some shit in her time, and also, again, with her fighting style and everything. I mean, in The Mandalorian, she was doing like some crazy Force Unleashed shit with the way she was, dipping in and out of the shadows and whatever. And it seems like she's become more like one of the rebels, really. Like, it literally does feel as if she's learned a lot from her time being a rebel. It's like she's using guerrilla tactics.
Yeah, so in Star Wars Rebels, before her fight with Vader, she is a Fulcrum, or I think she is the Fulcrum, which is basically the precursor to the Rebel combat style of not Rebel combat style, but back when there was a resistance to, or an alliance to restore the Republic, but it wasn't a rebellion. That's when the Fulcrum agents were like, we're the people who are actually going out and doing stuff, because the Alliance is refusing to get involved. And she was kind of the leader of the Fulcrums, is my recollection of it. So she is very much a guerrilla fighter at that point, and has been for several years. So
yeah, and I think that's probably it's probably why it's changed quite a lot, because sure, she can do all this flashy shit, and yeah, it probably, back during the Clone Wars, it probably was handy to be able to do that, because there were a lot more Force users back then as well, and just generally a lot of people that might require her to use those skills. But obviously, she's been in war, like, with more advanced troops. As soon as the clones changed and they started introducing stormtroopers and all these other, crazy bits of tech, and the world changed, I think she probably just changed along with it.
Do you guys think, with the Ahsoka series as well, do you think you'd want to see her maybe meet Luke, or do you kind of not want Luke because of like how he appeared in season 2 of Mandalorian? It was like really cool, but also like
I don't
weird.
want him.
Yeah,
it stood out too much.
I think I would maybe be interested in it, just because I know that Disney hired a famous YouTuber, I can't remember the name of, we'll put his name on the screen, but he is a kind of the forefront of doing
Deepfakes.
Deepfakes, thank you. And he deepfaked the Luke Skywalker appearance in The Mandalorian Season 2, and then Disney hired him to be the kind of researcher for deepfake technology going forward. Because apparently they did explore using deepfakes for Mandalorian Season 2, but for whatever reason they decided they couldn't pull it off to the quality they wanted, and then they decided that he could, so they hired him and gave him the budget to actually do it properly. So potentially with that in mind, obviously we haven't seen what he can do with Disney money because we haven't seen any of his work yet, but potentially it could look way better and less jarring. But at the same time, I'm like, at most like a 3-minute scene, please, sort of thing. But yeah.
His name was Shamuk.
Shamuk, thank you.
I personally
sorry, real
never...
quick, I'm pretty sure his picture on YouTube is of the Uncle Ben from the Uncle Ben Spices, isn't it?
I don't know on that one.
It'd be a bit ironic if it is. I might be misremembering. It's some like or Quavers or something. It's like some weird like food brand logo. I'm pretty sure.
I'll look into that one.
Okay.
I'm sure you can put it on the screen along with his name.
Yeah.
But I personally never actually really cared about Luke until they ruined his character in the sequels.
I feel like that's a whole conversation for another podcast.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't really care. Like, put him in, don't put him in. I'd rather have a different character if they're gonna bring back old ones. I mean, fuck it. Everyone wanted Plo Koon. Bring him back. I mean, he's well dead, but bring him back anyway, just for the sake of it.
Sure, they'll think of a way.
Yeah.
The thing is, as much as I agree with you that it'd be more interesting to see another character, I think this would work a lot better if the show was animated because you could just bring Mark Hamill in as the voice and it wouldn't be jarring whatsoever. But the potential for a Luke and Ahsoka conversation would be so interesting because she was Anakin's Padawan, feels like she failed him and he turned to the dark side on her watch. She failed to redeem him, etc., 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 and she's given up the ways of the Jedi. And then you have Luke, this fucking kid off some backwater planet, but he's Anakin's secret son, and he is a Jedi, and was trained by Obi-Wan and Yoda, both people important to Ahsoka as well, and he succeeded in redeeming Anakin. I think that would be a really interesting dynamic, but I don't want it if Luke looks really plastic and according to Alex, Tobey Maguire-esque during the scene. So yeah,
it wasn't that I ever disliked. Like, Mark Hamill is a fantastic actor, and I think he probably portrayed Luke very well. I just think Luke was one of the least interesting characters in Star Wars.
No, I'm more by that comment. I more meant that in The Mandalorian season 2, for me, that moment was really, really cool up until he took the hood off, and then I went, "Your face is just taking me out of it. It's just not." It was just there was something about it. It wasn't even like the replacing it on the head or the lighting or anything like that. It wasn't exactly that it was too stiff or the eyes were too dead. It was like it was really well done, but it was also just noticeable enough that it wasn't actually a real head. And I think that's always going to be a challenge when you know what Mark Hamill looked like and what he looks like now. But I was just like the whole time I was like, you're not quite Luke. You're like 98% Luke, and that 2% is throwing me off too much. And I think I said this to you guys at the time. I think that scene would have worked a lot better if Luke had never taken his hood off. It was a bold choice for them to take his hood off, but if they had just had the jaw and you do the little butt chin that Mark Hamill had, and then obviously we know it's him already because the green lightsaber, the X-wing, R2D2, etc. And then just have Mark Hamill's voice talking with the hood up. I think that would have worked really, really well. But yeah,
you should have used the Joker voice.
I'm the Joker, baby. Hold on. Are you a Jedi? I'm the last of the Jedi, baby.
Oh, no. But yeah, I think I would prefer like a different character. Oh, I was gonna say, oh fuck, I'm forgetting his name now. Oh, come on, he's like one of the coolest fucking characters.
That doesn't matter. Jango Fett, Boba Fett.
No, the blue bounty hunter.
Babu Frick. He is the coolest of the Cad Bane. That's who you think.
Cad Bane, yeah. God, I can't believe I forgot his name. Was Cad Bane the bounty hunter that there was another character in the Solo film, and I think Woody Harrelson's character said, "Oh, you killed blah blah blah."
No, that was oh god, I can't remember her name. Pale white-skinned lady with hair on the back of the head, just as like a ponytail.
Yeah, because she is in Clone Wars too.
Mm. That's correct. Or Singula, I think her name is, something like that. I'm gonna Google that. Or Sing.
Or did Woody?
Or Sing. That was it.
Or did Woody Harrelson kill her?
Woody Harrelson killed her.
So, okay, so now that is out of the way, is there anything else that suggests that Cad Bane may not still be alive and kicking?
No.
In this time period.
Other than, I guess, minor spoilers potentially for a future story, if you guys don't mind.
In Bad Batch?
Bad Batch, or maybe Book of Boba Fett, or something like that.
Oh, fucking hell, I would love to see him Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, if he did, I would assume it would be a flashback, but yeah, I'd be really down for that. But yeah, do you guys mind a spoiler for something that was made but never finished?
I'm cool.
Go for it.
So, way back when Clone Wars Season 7 was going to be made and then it got cancelled, but they did some of it, and then obviously they brought it back when Disney Plus came on. So one of the original episode runs that they did for Clone Wars Season 7 that they then cut when they were redoing it, but there is an animatic of some of it, is a story arc featuring Boba Fett, and I don't know the exact scenario behind it, but basically he gets into he's working with Cad Bane and Bosk and loads of the other bounty hunters that he hung out with, and for whatever reason he comes into confrontation with Cad Bane, who is the leader of the group. And
isn't that how he gets a dent in his helmet or something?
Yeah, exactly. They end up having a duel, and they both shoot each other, but Cad's shot hits Boba's helmet and doesn't kill him, but just gets the dent in the helmet. So that was, there's an animatic you can watch online of it. However, whether that, and Cad Bane supposedly died in that sequence. Obviously, they could have brought him back if they wanted to, but he supposedly died in that sequence. Obviously, that was never actually made into an episode, so we can kind of consider that non-canon. That may have taken place before Bad Batch, because it was going to be in Clone Wars Season 7, which is towards the end of the Clone Wars. But obviously, Bad Batch picks up straight after the Clone Wars, so they could reshuffle it and have it show up in Bad Batch Season 2 or whatever. However, the whole composition of this fight, literally the shots used and how it goes down, is almost identical to Cad Bane's brief duel with Hunter in one episode of Bad Batch, to the point that people were like, "Oh shit!" They reused that concept. So lots of people have theorized that it's never going to happen because they've already used that concept. But to be fair, the concept, obviously, the shots are near identical, but the concept is essentially a quick draw holster, holsters from the gun, shooting at each other at the same time thing, which is just an old Western thing.
Well, we've seen that plenty of times.
Exactly. So they could totally redo it for Bad Batch Season 2. They could use it as a flashback for Book of Boba Fett, which I think would be really cool if they did choose to redo it, but in live action. I do think it's quite likely that Boba Fett's going to show up in Bad Batch future, obviously, with his relationship with Omega. I think that's going to be really interesting territory to explore, so I wouldn't be surprised at all if that does play out in Bad Batch Season 2 or a future one. But yeah, so I think that is how Cad Bane was going to die, but technically we wouldn't class that. Oh, also he showed up, everything I just said though, because he shows up in the Bounty Hunter comic book series that's just been released, and that's taking place between episodes 5 and 6.
I really need to get to reading that. I own the comics.
I assume I haven't read it yet, but he's on the front cover of one of them, and it was a big reveal.
I'm pretty sure that's why I'm pretty sure seeing Cad Bane was in the comics was a reason for me to order them.
Yeah.
But I just haven't got around to reading them. I think I read the first one, and then I was just like, I'll just get around to them, and I haven't.
Yeah, so unless his appearance in that run, which, as I say, I'm fairly certain because most of the Star Wars comics at the moment are taking place between episode 5 and episode 6, I would therefore assume that this series is taking place as well during that. So unless Cad Bane's appearance in it is a flashback to the event I just described, I'm assuming he's still alive and well in between episode 5 and episode 6. But I don't know. I haven't read that comic book run yet.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I'll find out if I actually get around to reading it.
I really should get around to reading it because I have gotten past the point where that story begins with the Dr. Aphra series. So, yeah.
Can sympathise with that. I've been saying for about 3 years that I'll finish off the current volume of Hellblazer that I've been on, Hellraiser, for fucking ages. It's been so long I've forgotten the name of it.
Yeah, I bought some Hellblazer graphic novels the other day as well. I need to get around to them. And also my Watchmen, and also everything fucking else.
Yeah,
so
the
much.
list grows, but it doesn't shrink.
I mean, look, I need to continue listening to the Sandman audio series, which features Taron Egerton as John Constantine, and it's great. But yeah, I keep on not listening to that and doing other stuff. But yeah, cool.
Yeah, assuming Cad Bane doesn't die in something, I'd love for him to make a live action appearance.
Real quick, then, who would you have to play him?
Ooh.
I mean, he'd probably be either wearing prosthetic head or CGI because he's a Duros, so the heads are a bit weird looking.
I mean, what's his name?
So actually,
I'm really bad with names today. I was gonna say, the guy that usually plays all the sort of weird sort of like makeup costumed roles. Like,
yeah, I know
he played Abe Sapien in Hellboy, and and
I know exactly who you're talking about, but I can't think of what his name is either. But yeah, that guy. You were gonna say so, Tom?
Yeah, a common one that I get see brought up, who I very much agree with, is I'm probably gonna butcher his name, Gustav Skarsgård. He's the guy who plays Floki in Vikings. I don't know if you two have actually seen Vikings, but he's got the look, and he's got the talent.
Fair enough. To be honest with you, as I asked the question, I suddenly thought to myself that actually, you know what, I would just get the voice actor to play him, because if assuming it's they wanted to do it practical, which why wouldn't they? They can do it with that budget. It would probably be a kind of physical prop head with animatronics to do the facial expressions and whatever. That's what they do for like the Mon Calamari and whatever nowadays. And just have the original voice actor just do the voice. And then it kind of doesn't, it almost doesn't matter when the facial expressions are all animatronic. It kind of doesn't matter who's doing the physical body to a certain extent. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, his voice is so iconic as well.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like you gotta have it.
Mm-hmm.
Although I'm not sure how much you could just change it with like the voice modulator on it anyway.
Yeah. I actually don't know who plays Cad Bane. I'm kind of curious now.
Yeah, I'm not
wondering
sure.
whether it's a voice actor I'd recognise. Corey Burton, I do recognise that name.
I recognise that name as well.
I was about to say he played Buzz Lightyear, but that's in a like knockoff of Toy Story, and obviously not the main thing.
Anything we might know him in?
He he played Cad Bane in Star Wars Bad. He played Hugo Strange in Arkham City.
Okay.
And Zeus in God of War. I feel like I recognize him from more stuff, but I'm not seeing a lot of stuff that I recognize him, like his role to his thing. But also he played Gobi Glee in Bad Batch.
He played Zero the Hutt as well.
Oh, okay. Anyways, I think that's probably it for us.
Yeah.
Oh. Oh, why am I so bad with names?
Definitely delved away from Spider-Man.
You don't need to do one topic for an entire podcast, man.
I know. I'm just. I meant that as a good thing.
There is one more character that I'd like to show up.
Mm.
And again, I cannot fucking remember his goddamn name.
Babu Frick.
It's the pirate.
Oh, Hondo Ohnaka.
Hondo, yeah. I want him in everything.
I'm with you on that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
He is in Rebels.
Yeah.
Is he?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I will watch Rebels.
He becomes good friends with Ezra.
What, actually friends?
Yes. Well, Hondo level of friends with Ezra.
Yeah.
Also, when I said he became good friends with Ezra, I very nearly said his full name, but I very nearly said his full name was Ezra Miller rather than Ezra Bridger. All right. Well, thank you for tuning in to the Higgledy Piggledy Podcast, brought to you by Roll for Seduction and maybe a sponsor such as Star Wars Bad Batch or Spider-Man Sam Raimi trilogy or Spider-Man No Time to Die.
Or Raid Shadow Legends.
I'm Peter.
Are you pointing at
That's
me?
you. No, it's you.
Oh, it's Tom.
Oh, right, yeah, I forgot placement. I'm Tommy.
Oh, that's me. I'm Alex.
And this wasn't a very Higgledy Piggledy podcast until the very end, where it became very Higgledy Piggledy. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.
I nearly disconnected for some reason rather than just stopping recording.
Oh, right, yeah, stop recording.